Mom, I'm back. Tears fall as the human soldier reunites the alien queen with her child. The gunship hit the ground hard, and Corporal Dale Harper was already moving before the landing struts had stopped shaking. His boots crunched into the gray ash of Verath Station's lower docking bay, his rifle up, his breathing steady. The station smelled like burned metal and something older, something that reminded him of rain on dry earth back home in Georgia. He didn't stop to think about that. He never did in moments like this. "Contact left," shouted Private Lena Ortiz from behind him. She was 22, fast and never missed. Dale dropped, spun, and fired 2 controlled bursts before the Volkai patrol unit even had time to raise its weapon. The drone soldier crumpled against the bulkhead, its blue optical sensors going dark. There was no blood with Volkai machines, only silence and the soft hiss of leaking hydraulic fluid. "Clear," Dale called out. His voice was flat and practiced. The team moved fast through the gray corridor. 6 soldiers, all from the 14th Expeditionary Human-Alien Coalition Force. Their mission was simple on paper: breach the lower prison sector, extract whatever intelligence the Volkai had locked away. It was never simple in practice. Dale had been doing this for 3 years since the war started. 3 years since the Volkai launched their first assault on the outer colony systems, burning settlements and taking prisoners they never explained, for reasons the xenoanalysts still argued over in air-conditioned offices far from the front lines. He stopped trying to understand the politics a long time ago. He just kept moving, kept his team alive, kept doing the job. The prison sector was 6 levels below the docking bay. They reached the stairwell descent in under 4 minutes, which was good. The Volkai response teams were fast, and the window for a clean extraction was closing. Private Ortiz held up a fist. Everyone froze. Down the corridor, past a half-broken security door, there was a sound. It was low and rhythmic, not mechanical, not the hum of station equipment. It took Dale a moment to place it, and when he did, something tight moved through his chest. It was singing, or the closest thing to singing that he had ever heard from a non-human voice. A deep, resonant sound, soft and cycling, like wind through hollow stone. "What is that?" whispered Sergeant Pete Dolan, stepping up beside Dale. "Don't know," Dale said, "but it's not a machine." He held the team at the door while he eased forward alone. The security panel was cracked, and the door hung open 3 inches. He put his eye to the gap. The cell beyond was large by prison standards, maybe 15 feet across. The walls were bare gray composite, scratched and stained. There was no furniture except for a slab raised off the floor that served as something like a bed. On it, curled in the way that the Jareth people slept, knees pulled to their chest, arms wrapped around a smaller shape, was a figure he recognized instantly from Coalition intelligence files. The Jareth were tall, limbed differently from humans, their skin a deep indigo shade that shifted toward silver in low light. Their faces were wide, their eyes large and set far apart, their mouths capable of sounds no human throat could produce cleanly. They were an old species, older than Earth's first recorded language, and they had been the Volkai's first conquest, 30 years before humanity ever made contact with either of them. This one was a queen. He could tell by the crest on her head, a ridge of bony structures that the Jareth used for both identification and communication. Queens had crests that fanned wide, and hers was broad and layered, though several of the outer ridges were broken. She was singing to the smaller figure in her arms. Dale did not need to look twice to understand. The smaller shape was a child. He pulled back and looked at his team. "There's a Jareth queen in there," he said quietly, "and she's got a kid with her." Pete's expression did not change. "That's not our mission." "I know what our mission is," Dale said. "Command wants intelligence data. There's a server room 2 sectors over. We've got maybe 11 minutes before the QRF arrives." "I know," Dale looked at the door again. "I know." He stood there for 3 seconds, which was a long time in a combat zone. Then he reached for the door panel and entered the emergency override he'd memorized back in Kandori Base's briefing room, a code used across all Volkai-occupied stations because the Volkai had standardized their prison systems. It was an arrogant design choice. He was grateful for it now. The door slid open. The Jareth Queen moved instantly. She was off the slab and between him and the child in one fluid motion, her arms spread wide, a low sound rising from her that was not singing anymore. It was warning. It was threat. Even injured, even clearly underfed, she was trying to protect that child with every cell in her body. Dale lowered his rifle to his side, kept his hands visible. He had learned enough Jareth phrase sounds from the Coalition translators to communicate basics, not conversation, but enough to matter. He touched his chest. "Friend," he said in his rough approximation of the Jareth word, "Coalition, human." The Queen's eyes, deep amber, enormous, showing the whites at the edges from fear and adrenaline, fixed on him. Her crest moved, the broken ridges shifting in patterns he couldn't read. He said it again, slower, "Friend, Coalition." Behind her, a small face peered around her arm. Two large eyes, the same amber shade, blinked at him with the unguarded curiosity that seemed to be universal in the young of every species he had ever encountered. The Queen made a sound. His earpiece translated it with the rough approximation function the Coalition tech teams had built, imperfect but functional. "You are not Volkai." "No," he said. "We're human, we're here to get out, you can come with us." There was a pause. Her arms had not dropped. The child had not moved from behind her. "They said the humans would not come," she said through the translator. "They said no one would come." "They were wrong," Dale said simply. Pete appeared in the doorway behind him. "Harper, we are burning time." "I know." He did not look away from the Queen. "We are leaving right now, you and your child." Something changed in her posture. It was a small thing, a releasing of tension across her upper frame, a settling, almost too subtle to see. But Dale had spent 3 years learning to read non-human body language in the margins of missions just like this one, and he caught it. She reached back and took the child's hand. "Then we go," she said. They moved out of the cell and into the corridor, the Queen holding her child close against her side. The child, a boy by Jareth standards, Dale's translator indicated from a single word the Queen spoke quietly to him, was small, maybe 4 or 5 years in human equivalency. He was thin, and there were old marks on his wrists from restraints, which made Dale's jaw tighten in a way he did not let show on his face. Lena dropped back to cover the rear. Pete moved to the front. The rest of the team spread around the Queen and child, instinctively forming the kind of protective envelope that combat soldiers develop without being told. The Volkai came before they reached the second stairwell. 2 units, then 5, then a voice over the station's public channel ordering them to stop. Dale did not stop. He returned fire with Lena while Pete and the others kept the Queen and child moving. The child did not cry. He pressed his face against his mother's side and gripped her arm with both hands, and she ran with him, and she did not fall. Dale thought later that he had never seen anything run the way the Jareth Queen ran down that stairwell, injured, malnourished, one hand holding her child, with the absolute certainty of a creature that had decided nothing in the universe was going to stop her from getting her son out of that place. He had to sprint to keep up. They hit the docking bay with 2 Volkai units still in pursuit, the gunship's engines already cycling up from standby. The co-pilot, Warrant Officer Kay Brannigan, had not even waited for the order. She had seen the contacts on radar and made the call herself. Dale was the last one through the bay door. He fired twice over his shoulder, hit something, heard the clatter of a Volkai machine going down, and then he was inside and the ramp was closing and Kay was already lifting. The gunship punched through the station's outer bay doors with a resonance crack that rattled every loose panel aboard. Then they were out, in open space, the cold darkness of the Verath system spreading out around them with its 3 pale moons, and the distant glitter of the Coalition fleet waiting at the extraction point. Dale sat on the deck, his back against the fuselage, and looked across the hold. The Queen was sitting with the boy in her lap, both arms around him, her crest moving slowly in patterns that his translator did not attempt to decode, because some things did not translate. She looked at him. He nodded once. She held her son a little tighter. It was a 13-minute flight to the fleet carrier. Dale spent most of it staring at the ceiling, his rifle across his knees, not thinking about anything in particular. Pete sat beside him and didn't say a word, which was exactly right. They landed aboard the Coalition carrier Aldrich's promise to the kind of organized chaos that followed any unplanned extraction. Medical teams were waiting at the bottom of the ramp. Someone had radioed ahead, and there was a Jareth liaison officer, a tall female with a pale gold crest, who moved toward the Queen the moment she stepped off the ship. The two of them made sounds to each other that the translator gave up on entirely, which Dale figured was just as well. Some conversations needed to happen without an audience. He watched from the edge of the hangar bay, drinking water from a flask that Pete had handed him without comment. The medical team was trying to assess the boy, and the Queen was trying to let them while also keeping one hand on him at all times. The Jareth liaison was helping navigate that, standing close, speaking softly. Then a third figure entered the hangar bay from the far corridor, and Dale went still. It was a Jareth male, tall, with a crest that flared in the wide, layered pattern of someone senior in Jareth hierarchy. His indigo skin had the dull, worn look of someone who had not slept properly in a long time. He moved quickly, but with the kind of deliberate control that comes from training himself not to run in public, and Dale could tell from the way his body was angled that he already knew. Someone had told him. He stopped 6 feet from the Queen. She looked up from her son. The sound that passed between them was one that Dale would remember for the rest of his life, not because he understood it, because he didn't, not even the translator offered anything, but because of what it looked like. The way a sound can look if it is large enough and old enough and true enough, in the way a person's face changes when they hear something that they stopped believing they would ever hear again. The male took 1 step forward. The Queen reached out one hand. He caught it, and then she was standing, and then they were holding each other with the kind of grip that says everything that words in any language are too small to carry. The boy looked up from between the medical team's careful hands and said something short and clear. Dale's translator gave him, "Father." The Jareth male pulled back just enough to look at his son. His crest fanned completely open, every ridge, including the broken outer ones, spread as wide as they would go, and that, the Jareth liaison told Dale later, was the full display of joy, the kind that only happened in the highest moments of a life, when a Jareth felt more than their body could contain. The boy reached up. His father took him in his arms. In the corner of the hangar, Lena Ortiz was absolutely not crying. She had turned her face toward the wall and appeared to be very interested in a maintenance panel, and nobody mentioned it. Dale finished his water and looked at Pete. 11 minutes, Pete said quietly. What? That's how long we had before the QRF arrived. We made it in 9. Dale nodded slowly. Good math. Yeah, Pete looked across the bay. Good call, Harper. Dale didn't answer. He was watching the Jareth Queen, who had turned her head just slightly in his direction. Her amber eyes found his across the width of the hangar. Her crest moved a small gesture, deliberate, specific. The liaison appeared at Dale's elbow. She had been watching too. That means gratitude beyond the capacity of words, she said. There is not an equivalent in your language. The closest your translators would produce is something like thank you, but that is too small, much too small. Dale looked at the Queen, and then at the boy in his father's arms, and then back at the Queen. He put his hand to his chest and gave a small, single nod. She returned it. The debrief took 2 hours. Dale sat across from a coalition intelligence officer named Commander Nell Garrett, a sharp-eyed woman from Maryland who asked the right questions in the right order, which he appreciated. He gave her everything he had: the cell layout, the guard rotations he had observed, the server room's position relative to the prison block, the security override code. She listened without interrupting, took her notes, and then sat back. "You didn't pull the intelligence data," she said. "No," Dale said. "That was the primary objective." "Yes." She looked at him for a moment. "You understand that the Jareth queen you extracted is Valeth Sauron, one of the 6 queens of the Jareth High Circle. The Volcae have been holding her for 14 months. We didn't even know she was alive." Dale had not known the name before. He knew it now. "Her husband," Garrett continued, "is Admiral Toreth Sauron. He commands the Jareth Eastern Fleet, 38 warships. For the last 14 months, he has been fighting the Volcae with everything he has, but Coalition analysts have noted that his decisions have been increasingly aggressive, increasingly without tactical backup. We attributed it to grief." Dale thought about the way the Admiral had walked into that hangar, the deliberate control of a man who had been carrying something enormous for a very long time. "The Jareth do not function well under sustained loss," Garrett said. "It is different from how humans manage it. When a Jareth of high standing loses someone central to their bond circle, their cognitive function shifts. Not breaks, shifts. They become more decisive and less careful. 38 warships run that way is a serious liability." Dale waited. "The Eastern Front has been unstable for 6 months," she said. "Yesterday morning, Admiral Sauron requested coalition support for an offensive action that our strategists estimated had a 30% chance of success and a 60% chance of catastrophic fleet loss." She paused. 2 hours ago, he withdrew that request." Dale understood. "Whatever you think you did today, Corporal," Garrett said, "you may have also stabilized the eastern theater of this war." He thought about the server room 2 sectors over. The intelligence data, the clean, logical, mission-compliant decision that any other soldier might have made. "I didn't know any of that," he said. "I know you didn't," Garrett said. "That's what makes it interesting." She closed her notepad and stood up. "You'll be receiving a formal commendation. I expect the Jareth High Circle will want to issue one as well." She paused at the door. "Get some sleep, Corporal." He sat in the debrief room for a while after she left. The table was metal, standard fleet issue, with a ring stain on one corner where someone's mug had sat 1,000 times. He stared at it for no particular reason. He thought about Georgia. He thought about the singing. He thought about the child's face peering around his mother's arm, wide-eyed and careful and still somehow curious, even after 14 months in a Volcae cell. He thought that curiosity was probably the best thing about the young of any species. Then he got up, went to find his bunk, and slept better than he had in months. 3 days later, Dale was in the carrier's lower mess hall eating something that the cook insisted was a beef stew, but which tasted like neither beef nor stew, when Lena dropped into the seat across from him with a tray and a look on her face that meant she had something to say. "The Jareth kid asked about you," she said. Dale looked up. "What?" "The liaison told me, the boy. He asked the liaison who the human soldier was, the one who opened the door." She stabbed something that might have been a carrot. "Apparently he's been asking for 2 days." Dale set down his fork. "He wants to meet you," Lena said. "Officially, the Queen requested it through the Coalition Cultural Office. There's a whole protocol for it." She glanced up. "I'm told it involves something called a crest acknowledgement, which apparently means you stand still while she does something with her head plates and you don't flinch." "I don't flinch," Dale said. "I know you don't. I'm just telling you what the protocol sheet says." She went back to her food. "It's tomorrow, 900 in the forward observation bay. They're using it because it has the best light. Apparently Jareth find fluorescent lighting depressing." "Fair enough," Dale said. He picked up his fork again. Did it say anything about what I'm supposed to do, besides the not flinching? You look at the kid, Lena said. You say your name, he says his name, then you're part of his story permanently. She was quiet for a moment. The liaison said it's a big deal. That the Jareth pass those stories down, that his grandchildren will know your name. Dale ate his stew without speaking for a while. His name is Arath, Lena said. The kid, the liaison told me. Arath, Dale repeated. Means something in Jarath. The liaison said it translates roughly as the one who continues. Dale looked out the porthole. The cold dark of space and the far glitter of distant stars. Beyond those stars, 14 months of war that a child had spent in a gray cell with only his mother's singing between him and whatever the Vaukai had planned. The one who continues, he said. Yeah, Lena said. She did not say anything else, and that was exactly right. At 900 the next morning, Dale Harper stood in the forward observation bay in clean uniform. Not dress blues, just clean field uniform, which the Coalition Cultural Advisor told him was appropriate and perhaps even better because it was honest. The observation bay had a long curved viewport that looked out into space. The Aldrich's Promise was currently at anchor near the third moon of Verath, and the moon filled the lower third of the viewport with its pale, dusty light. The Queen, Valeth Sauron, stood at the center of the room. Her crest was complete and fanned, and she had done something to mark the broken outer ridges, a careful pattern of something white that the advisor told him was a Jarath marking of endurance. She was dressed in a wrap of deep blue fabric that the Coalition had found aboard ship in the diplomatic supply stores. She looked rested. She looked like what she was, an ancient queen of an ancient people, standing in the observation bay of a human fleet carrier as if she had always belonged there. Beside her stood the admiral. He was a head taller than her and held himself with the still, measured bearing of someone who had learned very young to take up exactly as much space as he needed and no more. His crest was closed to a narrow line, formal, the advisor told Dale, meaning this moment is important and I am present for all of it. And in front of them, holding neither of their hands but standing close enough to reach either, was Arath. He was wearing something that had clearly been put together with effort, small clothes of Coalition blue that someone had tailored down to fit him, his indigo skin bright in the observation bay's morning light. He was looking at Dale with those wide amber eyes, and he was not nervous. He was simply looking, with all the calm attention of a child who has decided that this is a thing worth paying full attention to. Dale walked forward and stopped at a respectful distance. The advisor, standing at the edge of the room, said in a very low voice, "Your name." Dale looked at Arath. "My name is Dale Harper," he said. The boy looked at him for a moment. Then he placed one small hand flat against his own chest, the Jarath gesture of introduction, and said, with careful articulation that suggested he had been practicing, "My name is Arath." The translator relayed it, though Dale had already understood. "Hello, Arath," Dale said. The boy's crest, small and not yet fully grown, moved in a pattern that the advisor translated as question or curiosity, both. Arath said something in Jarath, looking at Dale all the while. The advisor translated. He says, "My mother sang in the dark and then the door opened." Dale looked at the Queen. Valeth Sauron's eyes were steady and warm, and her crest was moving in something the advisor did not translate, something that Dale understood anyway. He looked back at the boy. "The singing helped," Dale said. "I heard it through the door. It was the best sound in that whole place." The advisor murmured the translation. Arath listened. Then he stepped forward 2 steps, closing the distance between them to almost nothing, looked up at Dale with those extraordinary eyes, and said something short and very clear. The translator gave Dale, "Thank you for the door." Dale crouched down to the boy's level. In 3 years of war, across 6 systems and a dozen campaigns, he had met diplomats and admirals and generals and heads of state, and he had never once felt the weight of a moment the way he felt it now. "You're welcome, Arath," he said. The boy reached out and put his hand, very carefully, on Dale's forearm. It was a gentle touch, just fingers light as anything. His eyes stayed on Dale's face. Dale heard Lena make a sound from the back of the room that she immediately converted into a cough. Valeth Sauron stepped forward then and stood before Dale. He straightened up slowly. The advisor said in his most careful voice, "Stay still. Look at her crest." Dale looked. Her crest opened, all of it, every ridge including the broken ones, and she held it there, fully spread, for 3 long seconds. The room was quiet. Even the ventilation seemed to hold still. Then it closed again, and she placed both hands briefly, gently, on Dale's shoulders. A Jarath gesture the advisor had described to him as reserved for moments of highest significance, something like the human act of placing a medal, except that it was never taken back and could not be declined. She said his name. She said it in English, which meant she had practiced it. "Dale Harper," she said. He did not flinch. He was right that he wouldn't. She stepped back. The Admiral gave him a single deep inclination of the head, the Jarath version of a bow for an equal, and Dale returned it. Then Arath tugged his sleeve. Dale looked down. The boy pointed at the viewport, at the pale moon, at the stars beyond it. He said something, and the translator gave Dale, "You know, all the way out there." Dale looked at the stars for a moment. 3 years of war across those stars. 6 systems. Hundreds of people he had fought beside, and some he had buried. "Some of it," he said. Arath considered this. Then he looked up and said, with the complete and unguarded seriousness of a child who has decided something important, "Then you show us, and we go." The advisor translated. The Queen's crest moved. The Admiral made a low sound that may have been a laugh. The translator didn't catch it cleanly, but it was warm. Dale looked at the boy. "Yeah," he said. "All right, Arath. We go." Outside the viewport, the pale moon sat quiet in the dark, and the stars beyond it were too many to count, and somewhere past all of that was a war that was not finished yet. But also, somehow, right here in the forward observation bay of a fleet carrier in orbit, something that might one day be called the beginning of what came after the war. The beginning of a story that Arath's grandchildren would tell. They would say there was a door and a human opened it. His name was Dale Harper, and after that we went together. That was enough. It was more than enough. It was exactly the right kind of story to carry forward into all the years that came after, across all the stars they had not yet seen. Dale stood at the viewport beside a child who had survived the dark, and he looked out at everything that was still to come. And for the first time in a very long time, he felt like something other than a soldier. He felt like a beginning.